Hi everyone, my name is Molly Marini and I am doing my cultural presentation on Cesar Chavez, who is an American born Mexican American civil rights activist. So Chavez was born on March 31st, 1927 in Yuma, Arizona. He was exposed to the working life and the fields early on because a majority of his family were migrant workers. But during the Great Depression, they had lost their homestead in Arizona and they were forced to foreclose and move out to California. After 8th grade, Chavez actually dropped out of school, so he went to the Navy for 2 years, and when he was done, he came back and returned to working in the fields. Chavez married his wife, Helen Fabiella, in 1948, and they have had 8 children. So Cesar was working in a lumber yard when he became a grassroots organizer for a Latino civil rights group called the Community Service Organization. He stayed with this organization through the 50s and eventually became a national director. And in 1962, he resigned from this position at the Community Service Organization because several farmers disagreed to the idea of forming a labor union for the farmer workers. So this marks the beginning of his activism. This is where he began his own organization called the National Farm Workers Association, and he said that he was inspired by Gandhi and St. Francis of Assisi to carry out peaceful work while still making sure that people understood how wrong the conditions for farm workers were. Chavez worked day and night alongside his partner, Dolores Herrera, to recruit more union workers in San Joaquin and Imperial Valleys. However, they were really financially struggling at the time, so Helen had to stay back with the children and at the field, and she just did her best to keep everything all right. I just wanted to list some of the conditions that Chavez and his team were advocating for. So, for example, grape pickers would be paid 90 cents an hour plus an extra 10 cents for every lug picked. So, if you think about it, most of those people are going home with maybe $12, $13 a day. All workers from the field would have to drink from the same cup, and this was more of their bosses mocking them and not so much that they couldn't afford it, which is very, very wrong. There were no toilets out on the field, and there were many children on the field who were exposed to not only the work life early, but the pesticides and the chemicals that they would use in those plants were not okay for children to be around. So now we are at the 1965 grape strike and boycott, where Chavez and the National Farm Workers Association launched a strike against the California Grape Growers and Company with the Agricultural Workers Organizing Committee. And before beginning this strike, Chavez asked both members of the unions to take a vow to be nonviolent. This is one of the things that Chavez is most remembered for because with every protest, every strike, every boycott he participated in, he was always nonviolent because he believed it created a greater stance than being violent. The strike began to receive a lot of support from other unions and minority groups, and that's when they turned this into a boycott. The most memorable part from this boycott was the 300-mile protest from Delano to Sacramento, which received nationwide attention. So this is just continued of the grape strike and boycott. Many of the men in unions began to become impatient around the 2.5-year mark because they were really struggling and they couldn't make ends meet. And during this time, Chavez announced that he would be going on a hunger strike to keep this movement nonviolent. He went without food for 25 days with only water, And many people understood why he was doing this, but were very scared for the sake of his health. The strike did stop the talk of violent actions, and the men continued to boycott and strike with their heads held high. And to make their voices heard, many workers began to travel beyond California and would go across the United States and even Canada to show by just stopping the act of buying grapes, they were helping their cause and protesting for basic human working rights. Many listened to Chavez to the point where in 1970, all their hard work paid off and workers received better pay, benefits, and protection. This was not the end of Cesar Chavez's activism, though, because in 1972, the two organizations that fought for the grape strike and boycott merged, and they formed a new organization called the United Farm Workers of America. And throughout the 1970s, they continued to fight for justice for agricultural workers, and Chavez himself even went on a second hunger strike. And in 1975, California passed a law that allowed workers to unionize and earn better wages. So in his final years of life and activism, in the 80s, Chavez forced the organization's time on campaigning for the dangers of pesticides for the workers and their children. And for this cause, Chavez entered his third and final hunger strike, and this one lasted a full 36 days. And unrelated to this hunger strike, Cesar Chavez died peacefully in his sleep on April 23rd, 1993, at age 66 in Arizona. So Chavez's legacy was very impactful, and we still see it even in today. But after his death, he was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and his slogan was actually used by Barack Obama in his campaign when he was running for his first term of presidency. We will always remember Cesar Chavez for his use of effective yet nonviolent tactics that made an impression on people nationwide. And even with his legacy, there is still so much work to be done for the agricultural workers, and it is up to us to continue to advocate for those who suffer through dangerous and unkept working conditions. As Cesar Chavez would say, "Sí se puede," yes we can. Thank you.